Hey there, in this video we're going to build an applet together. So I'm going to walk you through the whole process from start to finish, share a few tips and tricks as we go, and the applet that we're going to be building is a Pomodoro timer with a little bit of a twist. So for our very first prompt, we're going to type this in plan mode, and what that will mean is that it helps the AI model understand exactly what we're asking for, and sometimes if there are any clarifying questions it has, it'll ask them, and that can help you to catch things that maybe you didn't think of initially. So our starting prompt for this applet is to build a nature-based Pomodoro app. We're going to generate a beautiful nature scene for the background with an animated fog effect that covers the scene. As the time passes, the fog should gradually thin out to reveal the whole image by the end. We want to add a minimal settings menu to configure the timer and show a subtle countdown in the center of the screen in a beautiful font. Okay, so this is exactly what I was talking about, and it has asked some questions to clarify some of the finer details that we didn't specify. So it's asked what durations should be configurable in settings, the work session, short break, long break, or just a single timer duration. Should the app have automatic transitions between work and break sessions or a manual start? And when the timer completes, should it play a notification sound or show a visual indication? For the fog effect, should it gradually fade out linearly over the time duration, or would you prefer a more dramatic reveal, example faster near the end? Should the timer have play, pause, reset controls, or should it be ultra minimal with the timer auto starting? So in answer to those questions, we want all of the configuration options that it suggested, plus the number of sessions before a long break. We want it to automatically transition from one session to the next. We want a subtle chime, higher frequency for the end of a work session and lower for the end of a break. We want the more dramatic reveal that it suggested, which is a cool idea, something that I hadn't thought of. And we want it to be super minimal, so just a start button that hides once the timer has started. Send that off, and we're going to get our first version of the applet, which is always the most exciting. For this applet, I've started by building with Claude Sonnet 4.5. It's my personal favorite AI model. It is kind of sits in that mid-range as far as speed and price goes. There are cheaper, quicker models, but I find that this one gives the best results. You can always switch between models as you go. You can also adjust the level of thinking effort. So if it's struggling with something, you can bump up the thinking effort and it'll spend more time reading the code and that sort of thing before it makes any changes. Okay, and here we have the very first version of our build. So let's go ahead and click start. And the timer starts. That's great. Now, we don't want to sit here for 25 minutes to see how that fog gradually dissipates. So what we're going to do is go ahead and try and change the settings here to make a shorter duration. And we can see that the settings button isn't actually working. If I had to guess, I would say that maybe it's also hidden behind the fog. So we're going to get it to fix that first. The settings button isn't working. Is it behind the layer of fog? Now, sometimes, like this one, it might be quite obvious what's not working, and you can just clarify that and ask it to fix it. In this case, I didn't even have to ask it to fix it. It's obviously implied that I would like it to work. But sometimes if you're not sure exactly what's going on, I find the best way is just describe what's currently happening and then specify what you need to happen instead. Obviously, we need this to work, and since I can hover over it now, I assume that works. So let's change the work duration to 1 minute. We'll make the short break also 1 minute so that we can fly through this while we're testing. And save, and start. And we can see there that the fog is starting to clear, so that's excellent. I don't know that I love this background. Now, the AI image generation is obviously amazing, but I find that this one is a little bit too maybe fantasy. So I think the first thing that I'm going to do is just clarify that I would like it to be a hyper-realistic sort of photo style background, the sort of thing you might see on your Mac desktop. Okay, so while that builds now, we can also continue playing around with the applet. We can hide this and see how this progresses. We can see what happens when it gets to the end of this session and goes to the next one, test that the chime is working, confirm that it auto jumps into the break and that sort of thing. There we go. Okay, we got 2 chimes. I don't love that. I think we just need the 1, so we can specify that that should be fixed as well, but it is auto transitioning into the next break, which is perfect. All right, here we go. The new build is done. Let's see if this image looks more photorealistic. Again, we're going to change this to 1 minute for each so that we can move through this quickly while we're testing. Another top tip as well, obviously at the moment I have to type in 1 minute for each of those durations, but you might find that you want to just set those as the defaults while you're testing. It's not so hard for this case, but depending on what you're building, sometimes it's nice to just make those defaults really, really simple while you're testing, and that should make things work. Now, I do much prefer this image. It's exactly what I was hoping for. It looks a lot more realistic, and it's cool having the sun coming through those trees. I think that interacts really nicely with the foggy overlay. What I don't love is this font. It's super minimal and it's super clean, but I do feel like it could have a little bit more style. Now, one thing that's really cool, you can ask Applet to just give it a more stylish font or tell it the sort of vibe of the font that you're looking for, but it also has access to all of Google Fonts. So you can go to Google Fonts and browse and just pick one that you like and say, hey, use this one instead. Right now I've filtered for artistic. I can see they're mostly quite cursive, which isn't really what I'm going for. Maybe calm would be nice. We can go through here and find something that suits the vibe that we're looking for. This Poiré one is quite cool. It's got a little bit more style to it. So I'm going to tell it to update the fonts to use Poiré 1. And that's it, we're ready to go. It can move through this. Now, as you can see, I like to break most of these changes down into a specific prompt for each change. With smaller changes, especially little tweaks, visual tweaks, you can add a few in a single prompt and it'll normally be fine. I like to use a bulleted list. Makes it easier for me when I'm going back through and reading the chat, but it also seems to give me really good results. Now that's cool, so it's updated the fonts here and it's definitely got a lot more style to it. I like that. I think that what we could probably do is fix that chime next. So this is what I talked about where you can break a prompt down into 2 parts because you're trying to correct a behavior. So the chime currently sounds twice for each change. It should only sound once. And we'll send that off. Okay, let's start the timer. That is really very genuinely satisfying watching the fog clear. Here we go, we have a single chime, that's perfect, that's exactly what we were looking for. Now the final change that I'm going to make, I don't love how the fog just immediately comes back on the break. I think the fog should stay cleared for the break and only come back in as you transition into that next working session, so that's what I'm going to do. Okie dokie, one final test on this. And then I feel pretty good about the basic functionality, and I think there's just one last thing that we'll need to add. Perfect, so the fog did not come back in for the break exactly as we requested. Now, the final thing that I think this needs is some kind of indicator of which session you're currently in and how many sessions you've got until your next long break. So we're going to take a snapshot of the app as it is here, and then I'm going to draw directly on the snapshot and use that to tell Applet what I'd like to build. So I think down here in this section, we'll just make that an outline. And let's make it a soft yellow. And then we'll add an annotation and say, okay, in this section, add a visual indicator with minimalist boxes filled in for the current session, order only for the others, show which work session you are currently in, and how many are left before the long break. Use smaller boxes to show the breaks in between. Now we can just select this entire snapshot and that will include the shape that I've drawn and the annotation there, and we can send that off as our prompt. I don't even need to type anything else. Applet can read that annotation and add exactly what I need it to add. And there we go, we have a section at the bottom of the screen showing the current work session, the break, the work, the break, the work, the break, the work. Exactly what we were looking for. It's super minimal. I love this. I'm going to go ahead and start focusing, get some other work done. I will also publish this. You can publish it. We're going to call it Pomodoro, obviously, because it is a fog-based Pomodoro timer. You can find it at pomodoro.applets.com. And if you do visit it, you will see this Edit with Applet button here in the corner, which means you can then load all of this existing code into your own Applet account and start prompting away, make any tweaks, you know, generate a different type of background if you're into something else, adjust anything at all that you like, build on this, take it from there. Have fun with it.